Anyway, Grid One's here. You might know him as a regular super chatter of whatever he called in. Grid One, go ahead with your question.
Yeah. So, have you ever actually watched an episode of whatever?
I've seen clips.
Clips. Okay. So let me help you out because I've oddly watched a lot of them. I know it's shocking, but Brian's not red pill to start off with. I think that's like your first mistake is to consider him red pill. He actually tends to condemn those guys quite a bit and pokes fun at them. If you'd watched a show, you'd probably know that, but you haven't, so you're just speaking kind of out of your ass. That's okay. It's just like Andrew caught. You didn't do your research on the Instagram thing. You didn't do your research on the show. I kind of have to say that from my point of view, you're really just clout chasing and bringing an argument that doesn't need to be made.
I'm clout chasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who am I clout chasing from?
Well, you're on Andrew's channel right now.
I have 4 times the amount of followers. How am I clout chasing?
You went out of your way. I'm sorry.
Right.
I wasn't.
That's just
done.
an interesting view.
Can we let the caller finish his statement?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to not cut you off there. You went on that Andrew's Discord demanding that he condemn Brian, which is weird because that would be the opposite of what I would do if I were trying to get Andrew to do anything. First of all, he's somewhat stubborn, and second, I think just an open hand works better than a fist. You seem to not have learned that in life. I'm old, so I have, and and this is really the last thing. I'm just kind of, and I don't know that there's a true question in here other than that, I don't think that you've prepared and that you understand anything about the show. Brian actually hates having OF girls on, and we give him a lot of crap about it all the time because it ruins the show. It actually ruins the show, and we don't like it. You can go back and watch where we say, Brian, no more OF fans. The people who are watching it. And he'll actually point out when he does not have them. We would prefer that they not come on because they are. It becomes like a degenerate cesspool, and nobody wants to watch it. It ruins the content, in my opinion. Although I do get to make fun of them, and I do like that. So I just think that you're coming at this in absolutely the completely wrong angle. You're welcome to give me your angle. But since you haven't actually watched the show, I'm not sure how valid your opinion is.
Yeah.
And I really think that you should do that. And as a Christian, I would especially think that before you went and condemned somebody, you would know a little bit more about them. And I will mute myself.
I mean, where's the question in that? I'll respond to that monologue. I guess I'll try. I've outlined my position. I've researched deeply into you're saying like, oh, this was a surprise that I didn't know it was just the Instagram accounts that were linked. I've made multiple videos about this, and I openly wanted to discuss this with Brian or with Myron and the other guy on the Fresh and Fit. I have no problem with discussing what do you think you're doing to benefit these young men by advertising these OnlyFans women? Do you think it's a good thing that he advertises their boobs and their ass and their sexually provocative pictures as the thumbnails to their videos? You think that's a good thing? You think that helps men to not give in to the temptation?
I'm sorry, was that a question for me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that
and
was
then
a question.
just kind of briefly respond, Grid One, and we got to move to the next caller.
Briefly. Look, I think you're completely off base. Those girls actually have complained. Brian's been sued because an OF girl lost subscriptions from being on the show. You don't know that because you don't watch the show. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're simply virtually
One woman is your argument of the hundreds that have been one.
Well, I only need one example to refute your argument.
So the hundreds that go on there and continue to go on there to gain clout.
Well,
how many women have been on this show?
Well, do you have proof that more of them have gained than lost subscribers, Or is that just something that you believe for no particularly good reason?
I think people vote with their feet, to speak in a figurative sense. And the fact that they keep going on the show, even though their ideologies get destroyed from guys like you, because it's an easy destroy, and I commend you for destroying the ideology. I think there's some utility in it. They don't go on there to win or lose a debate. They go on there to gain followers to their OnlyFans and Instagram accounts. It's for clout.
Yeah, So while I agree that there could be some substance there, do you actually have evidence and proof that that's true, or is it just an assumption?
Unless I had some kind of Instagram follower tracker, I'm being speculative to why else would they go on the show? Why else, with millions of followers and hundreds of thousands of men watching? Why do you think it doesn't take a few brain cells to connect the dots? Why do you think they're going?
Well, I don't know. I thought you just got done saying that they're some of the stupidest people around, and yet now you seem to be giving them all kinds of credit towards
You understand some of these OnlyFans girls have agents, right? As I've heard. Yeah. And don't you think the agents think that it's a good thing to have their girls advertised on these shows with hundreds of thousands of guys watching?
I think sometimes, but I think that they would have a much easier time if there was no ideological pushback. Don't you agree?
I mean, sure, but they don't care about the ideological pushback.
Well, prove it.
Do guys watch porn to see if the girl's
prove
smart?
That they would rather go on and have no resistance than have some.
How do you prove something like that?
Well, I mean, don't make the claim if you can't provide the proof.
How can you prove something like that? Of what's in their mind?
It would be simple.
Well,
you could maybe go talk to them. You can poll them. You can watch the show. You could do all these different things. You don't actually know for sure that what you're saying is true. It does make sense. But I was even willing to just grant that it was true. And I still think you're wrong, even if I grant that it's true.
If I was wrong, and my only criticism to Brian is, hey, I want to go on your show so I can debate you on if what you're doing by promoting these women
He's not
is
there
beneficial.
to be debated by someone like you.
He blocked me. That's evidence, and that's evidential enough that he's doing this for profit.
Well, yeah, most people want to live. That's how he makes his living.
Yeah.
You wanted to go on to debate a host on his own show. Brian doesn't debate anyone.
He debates all the girls that go on the show.
Andrew, he doesn't.
Not really. He doesn't really debate with them.
He simply tells them that they're doing something wrong.
He really doesn't. I'm going to be totally honest with you. He really doesn't do much in the way of debating. He does give a bit of ideological pushback, but it seems like that's mostly to stir the conversation, not to actually give ideological pushback. He seems to always defer that to guests that he has on, who are in the opposite position, be they male or female. He himself, I have not seen actually do much in the way of debating, or he just makes like a fucking World of Warcraft reference and he'll go off on that for 20 minutes just because it's funny. But it seems that his function there is to kind of stir the pot rather than make arguments himself. That's just what I've noticed. I've been on a ton of times. So
his podcast is to entertainment purposes only. He doesn't care to help young men.
You can't say anything about what his podcast is for. You've never watched it.
I've watched segments of it and I've seen clips.
You've never watched a single episode.
It's 5 hours. You're talking like these episodes.
Never watched.
You're saying like these episodes are 10 minutes.
Notice that I've not said one word about your podcast because I don't even know who you are. Right. I've never watched you. So I won't comment on your ability. Right. You can't comment on Brian other than you approached him to be on the podcast and you told him probably rudely that, hey, I want to debate you. And he's like, well, I don't debate. So no.
That's not what he said. He didn't say I don't debate. You're putting words in his mouth. You seem to know him so well, so you should
I don't. Okay. You're the one that said that he didn't want to debate you.
All right, Grid One, if you want to have a debate another day, maybe you and I can have a debate. You ask your question.
I don't debate.
It wasn't really a question. Well, then why are you debating me right now?
I'm not debating you. I'm just telling you you're wrong. That's not a debate. That's a simple statement.
You think I'm wrong because the guy you give thousands of your dollars to as his like number one donator, you're definitely not biased in this. You're definitely not biased.
I think you're making a speculation here. You're assuming that Grid One has made any donations to thousands of dollars. That's just
Grid One admitted this in the Discord server of the Crucible.
Yeah. Okay.
Take that, moderator.
All right, I'm just gonna be quiet. Let you guys
take that, moderator.
I've given money to Andrew too.
Okay,
and I'll give him money
to whoever you want. Have you given money to an OnlyFans girl too?
No.
Okay, I find that one hard to believe. Okay.
Absolutely not. I fry
Okay,
those.
good.
I fry those girls up. They're degenerates. Just like you're kind of a degenerate yourself, and you need to
I'm a
wake up and
degenerate
realize
myself.
that.
How am I a
Because
degenerate
you
myself?
keep assuming things that you don't bother to look into and research,
You
and that is
promote the
wrong.
guy that's promoting them. You give money
I
to
don't
the guy
promote
that keeps
anybody.
advertising those women.
He's not advertising anybody.
He
He's
puts
advertising
their
his own
pictures as
show.
the thumbnail to the videos. So if there's a podcast that was anti-drugs and they brought drug dealers on every week and they had 12 drug dealers and showed the drugs as the picture
I love
of
that
the
you use
thumbnail,
this. Hold on. I've already heard it.
if
I've already
they
heard
put
it.
the
You can
address
stop.
of the
I've already
drug
heard it.
dealers, is that not promoting the drug
I've already
dealers?
heard it.
Is that promoting the drug dealers in that instance?
You've already said this 3 times.
Okay.
I'm
so
surprised.
is that-
I think
so
it's very nice of
answer
Andrew
the-
not to have called you on it. But here's the thing. Yeah, putting pictures of the drugs that they were arrested for in the video would be fucking great. I would love that.
You think it's good to show the address of the drug dealer so people know where to go and buy it?
Yes, go beat
You
their
think
ass.
that's good? You think it's good to show the drug dealer's address so people can
Yes,
go and buy the
go-
product?
let
I
the
mean-
cops
And
know
he's calling
exactly where
me
to
the
arrest them.
degenerate.
You're not
and
going
he's
to win
okay
this.
with
Hey,
now.
hey, hang on, RC. Why do they show sex offenders' addresses?
so you can stay away from it.
Yeah, that's right. So there's, the opposite of your point here is that showing a person's address does not necessarily mean that it's for good things to happen to them. That's
In
an
some
insane.
instances,
That's
no.
an insane claim.
In some instances, no. In this instance, you are promoting the very product that you're showing people where to go and buy.
Yeah, or you could also be showing people what not to go and do, and that I've already shown you. There are segments which you yourself engage in by pointing to the product and then saying, "Do not engage in this." You do it
I don't show
yourself.
them where to find the product. I
Yeah,
don't
but
show
you
them
that's because you assume they're so fucking stupid they can't figure it out for themselves, which is insane.
All right.
Anyway, Grid One, I appreciated the call in. I'm sorry we don't have any more time. I got to move on to the next caller.
I didn't appreciate the call-in, Grid One. Why don't you donate some more money to your favorite fan, bro?
Which would be who? Me?
Sorry, what?
Why don't you go donate some more money to the guy that's advertising these women? And then
doesn't
keep calling
advertise.
people like me a degenerate that's standing against that. That's interesting.
I was trying to be
That's
nice
pretty
to
ironic.
you, but you
You
can't
were
seem
not
to
nice
get
to
it.
me.
You
You
are a
were not
degenerate,
nice to me.
piety signaling.
All right, guys. We can't hang.
We gotta move on.
We got to move on. I'm sorry. We
No,
got
that
it.
wasn't even a question. I thought this was a question segment.
Well, usually it is, but
No.
they can whatever their criticisms are that they want to give you and you want to give back is fine.
All right, fair enough.
Go ahead, Adam Dole, when you're ready.
Hey, so I do have a question. When you were talking to Andrew about rights, Andrew asked you who determines what rights are if not the Supreme Court. You appealed to God. So how does God? How do you get the First Amendment from God?
Do you think that our rights as human beings come from the government or come from God?
I don't think. Well, that's an interesting question, but that doesn't answer my question.
Okay, I'll
So-
answer. So if the Supreme Court made a ruling and the government said that it is okay to rape people, is that now
Hang on.
okay to-
Don't use that language here. Just
Oh, we
say,
can't say that?
yeah, say
So-
essay, please.
All
Just
right.
essay,
Okay.
please.
If the government
Okay,
said that it was okay
so
to essay people,
this is
that
not
where we get our
responsive to my
rights from?
question.
It is a response
This
to your
is-
question. Our
the-
rights as human
so
beings. come
you're
from God,
attempting
not
to
the
answer
government.
my question with another question. So I will ask it again. How did you determine that the First Amendment comes from God?
The First Amendment is not a human right. The First Amendment is a right given by the government. Our rights as human beings come from God.
Okay, so when you appealed to God when Andrew asked you where rights come from, specifically in the context of free speech, you admit that the free speech, First Amendment, does not actually come from God?
The First Amendment is a right given by the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, so
Our
that doesn't
rights as
answer my
human
question.
beings do not come from the government. Our
So
rights
then
as human
that,
beings
so
come
then
from
that
God.
right,
That's my answer.
so then the First Amendment and freedom of speech, you don't believe is a God-given right.
Yeah.
The First Amendment is a right given by the U.S. government.
Okay, so direct. So I will make this question as direct as possible. This is a yes or no question. Okay.
Okay.
Does the right to freedom of speech come from God?
No, it comes from the U.S. government.
Okay. So who determines what qualifies as free speech? God or the U.S. government?
If you're talking about legality in the United States, determined by the government, but our rights as human beings don't come from the government. That's my
Okay, so if the government determines that pornography is free speech, then necessarily it's free speech, right?
in that government, sure.
Okay, so you say in that government. So I assume in that sense you mean it can change depending on government, right?
The rights of a government can change depending on the
Yeah,
government.
okay. So do you think that free speech is compatible with Christianity?
Sure, there's elements of it, of course.
Okay, well, so how do you explain the first commandment, the third commandment, the fifth commandment, and the ninth commandment? All those commandments are speech restrictions.
Again, you want to get into a theological debate?
Well, if you're
already
going to
answered
bring
your question.
theology...
You asked a question, I answered your question, and now you're just asking me like a litmus test of questions.
Well, yeah, so if you're going to bring theology into a political debate, I don't think it's unfair for me to interrogate your theology when it comes to
I've
politics.
already answered it. I think our rights as human beings are given to us by God, not the government. Because the government
you don't.
So you think the government can take our human rights away? And restrict our human
you've already admitted that rights, at least the right to freedom of speech, comes from the government. So obviously, you don't think that all rights come from God. You think that some rights, at least, come from the government.
No, I think our rights as human beings come from God. And then whatever government you're in can create legal rights for the country that you're living in. But those rights are human-made rights. Our rights inherently as human beings come from God.
Okay, so what's the right
All
that
right.
comes from God?
All right.
Last question, Adam Dole.
No, he's asking 15 questions.
Yeah, well, I give everybody an approximation of time. That's all.
I answered his question. I'm not like, you want to have a theological debate, we can do that another time.
All right.
Yeah, so this is, well, hold on, just briefly. You criticize Grid 1 for not asking any questions, and you criticize me for asking too many. What's the happy medium here?
I thought people come on to ask a question, and you asked like 7 of them.
Well, no. They come on for an allotment of time to have an exchange with.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
fair enough. You came on, you asked the questions. I tried my best to answer them to the best of my ability, and you're trying to like go off into a theological debate, which is going to require more than the allotted time that you have on here to talk.
All right. Listen, I got to remove you, Adam. Thank you for the call, and I really appreciate it. Hang on a second. Hang on. I see all of you guys in the background. Just bear with me. We're going to try to get all of you up and through. Sun Chaser, can you hear me okay?
Sir, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead with your question.
So, I appreciate your content, Andrew. My first question is to RC. So, I understand your position and thinking that, it's you're promoting degeneracy. What's the alternative? Because throughout the debate, you're criticizing, you have a criticism about it's promoting degeneracy. So what is the alternative? Because as a Christian, I'm also a Christian. And I think it's time that we stop being passive and started stepping into enemy territory. If you don't think that's the right way, then what's your alternative?
All right, Sun Chaser, I would say social media platforms, maybe with the exception of Twitter, or now known as X, is enemy territory. As a conservative content creator, I've already entered enemy territory. And I started with 0 followers. I didn't have some organization give me a large platform. I had to earn my platform, just like I imagine Andrew's had to earn his platform. I've already entered enemy territory by making a social media account on a left-wing content creating app.
Yeah, but that's crazy, because that would be you supporting the left-wing content creator app, which then has links all over it, which lead to women's OnlyFans.
Yeah, well, that's very different than a concentrated platform that's designed to promote those women.
Yeah, Instagram is designed to promote degeneracy, so is YouTube and these other platforms. To say anything otherwise, totally disingenuous.
All right. I mean, you're the mental gymnastics.
That's not mental gymnastics. That's just using your own logical step-by-step to show how it applies to you as well. It's not mental gymnastics.
Sun Chaser, to answer your question, right? I've entered enemy territory. I've created an account, and I've spoke against these ideologies.
Okay.
That's the alternative. All of us can do that. We all have the right to do that.
So then I understand that. So then how do you battle against the algorithm? Because at that point, like Andrew said, at some point, you end up building an echo chamber. And then that's how the algorithm works of the internet, right? So once you step into enemy territory, like you say, you're on Twitter and social media, you have your following. Then how do you interact with the people who aren't in that realm? How
I've
do you
already
spread
said
that?
that
How do you
I
step over
don't
that?
debating against the people so long as the platform you're going on isn't clearly a sexual an OnlyFans ad agency. And when you go on a platform
But
as a
that's
Christian, I'm looking
but
at this.
that's limiting. Is that not limiting your reach?
Of course it is, but I don't negotiate with God and the devil. I do what God wants me to do. And going on a platform that's promoting these OnlyFans prostitutes is not something I want to bring my followers to do. The only time I'll go on is to call off the host.
All right, so fair enough. So then my last question would be, is that you decide? Is that your alt? Is that your? Are you the one who came up with this, or is this you following being a Christian? Is this something that you came up with, or is this you following what Scripture speak? Because did Jesus not step in enemy territory and interact and spread the word to these degenerates? Because this is nothing new.
He did. You know what Jesus didn't do? He didn't tell everyone that was listening to him speak to, let's say, a prostitute, what her address is to go find her at her house. He didn't let people know where.
So that's not you.
Yeah.
Right, but he's still there. So you going on the platform is not you promoting. It's the platform guy. So I'll be charitable. You can be charitable and be like,
caller, you have to wrap it here. We're basically just out of time for you. I'm sorry. Make it very, very brief.
I appreciate it, but yeah.
Okay.
So again, I understand what you're saying, RC, but if you're worried about promoting, it's not you promoting. It's still the host. So
Sun Chaser, do you think if when you brought up Jesus,
bro, we have to move on, or we'll never get through the callers. I want to be as respectful as I can to your time. So, Logan D, you've been waiting patiently in the background. Go ahead when you're ready.
Hey, what's up? Good to see you again, Andrew. So RC, oh shit. So in your mind, what is the proper way to do online proselytization and evangelism? Because it seems like you have a big issue with the way Andrew does it, stepping onto these platforms and talking to and debating these women on their lifestyle and their worldview in order to bring them closer to the truth.
You're done with the question?
Yeah.
Andrew's already said he doesn't care to change their mind, so he doesn't care to show them the truth. He's doing it for the people. Andrew said that earlier in the debate. He doesn't care to change their mind.
No, I said it's a secondary conditional. I'm happy if I do, but that's not the primary reason I do it.
The primary reason you do it is for the people watching.
Yeah. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to say the only reason I do X is for this reason. That's not true. I'm happy if I can reach these people as well. I'm just saying that that's not the primary motivation which I have.
Okay. Well, Logan, to try to answer your question, right? I will repeat for like the 15th time. You can debate these ideologies. You can go on these platforms and debate these ideologies. But if you're a Christian and you see, hey, they're advertising these women, but in the thumbnail, it's clear advertisement. When you go on the whatever YouTube channel, you see they're advertising their pictures. Are they not? Are they not advertising the product, which is their body? You don't think so?
They do to an extent. However, I kind of fail to see how that's Andrew's problem when he is specifically there to confront those worldviews and to refute them.
The only criticism I had to Andrew, and I'm surprised this was an entire debate, was that, Andrew, why do you stop short of just asking the host, why do you platform and advertise those women? Because you've created an OnlyFans ad agency.
Well, no, we went over this. I don't believe it's an OnlyFans ad agency. And I think that specifically that the reason that this happens is because he wants to provide, which most debate channels will also do, a neutral ground for people to have these engagements. I platform tons. I platform tons of leftists, for instance, and I do put their links down in the bio, even though they are for some of the worst types of degeneracy possible. But how else can I have a platform from which these ideologies, which I think mine is the best, to debate? How could I do that without being fair across the board? There's no way to do it.
Okay. Logan, did you have more questions?
I think that was about it. But I did want to say, if I can remember what it was. Yeah, that'll be all. Thanks for having me. Good to talk to all of y'all.
Yeah, you too, man. Okay, have a good night. I'm going to move on to the next caller. Sorry, callers in the background. Just be patient. We're going to try to get all of you through as fast as we can. Chase Haggard, go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to echo something Andrew said earlier in the debate, that we want you engaging with these people. We want your platform to grow. We want you, someone who is not a total spurg, someone that is intelligent, to be fighting these battles with us. We want that. But I do have to, obviously I have disagreements, so I'm going to have to go in on those. So today is St. Patrick's Day in the Orthodox Church. St. Patrick was actually a slave to Druid priests and was told he should leave there and flee because he's stuck in a den of paganism. Yet he converted, by conservative estimate, by secular scholars, at least about 150,000 pagans. Should he have not engaged with them in their enemy territory, proselytizing to them?
I don't think I've ever said to not engage with the enemy or the people that don't believe what you believe in their territory. I'm not opposed to that.
I know that you say that, but the principle of other people being able to go and find their views or their content that is lewd and degenerate, that's the deterrent. But these people, by the same principle, they can just go talk to these pagans. If a Christian heard a saint talking to a pagan or an apostle talking to a pagan, they could go, well, pagan, what do you think? Well, yeah, I mean, going and doing these human sacrifices sounds pretty cool, and I found you because Saint Paul talked to you.
Let's say any of the disciples let's take one of them, were in a building that had pagan people in it, let's say a bunch of prostitutes were in it, and they were speaking to them to convert to Christianity and to repent. But the person that owned the building that's there hosting this event says, hey, by the way, for everybody that's here, every man outside, here's the address to all of the prostitutes here. Don't you think the disciple would push back on that and say, hey, don't promote where they live, because I don't want these men to go and find them. Don't promote this lifestyle. We want them to repent. But don't tell all the guys listening in where they live so they can go and find them.
Well, there was just brothels there. Then they didn't even have addresses, so they could just go to the brothel.
It's a hypothetical question. It's a hypothetical question.
I know, but I'm just saying, I'm fine with entertaining hypotheticals, right? Like if I didn't eat breakfast, this morning, I would be pretty hungry. But the point is, I'm talking of using historical facts here. I got one more question, and then one statement at the end.
Very brief.
Yep. Two things. So one, you're not pro-choice, of course.
No, I'm not pro-choice.
You're not pro-choice. Are you pro Christians being outside of abortion clinics where they're advertising abortion and the address is right there and the building's right there and they're trying to stop women from getting abortions?
They're standing on public property to stand against it.
That's what Andrew's doing. One more thing, you said
that's not what Andrew's doing, though. That's not what Andrew's doing.
So literally what he's doing. But one more thing, you said that
not what he's doing.
You said orthodoxy is false. I don't think you want to take this debate, but I'm happy to debate you about orthodoxy versus Protestantism anytime.
Okay.
Cool.
And I'm happy to reach out on that in a future debate if you'd like to come back, RC, if you feel like you've been treated fairly by the platform.
I don't think I've been treated unfairly.
Good. Well, I mean, I don't ever want a person to walk away feeling that way. I know that we had a contentious debate, but I think that those are healthy and good, and we should have more of them. Rachel, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, my question was for RC. You said earlier in the debate something about like toxic patriarchy. I haven't heard that term. Can you tell me what toxic patriarchy is?
If I said that, I did not mean that. I don't even know in the context of why.
I can give you the context because I just watched it earlier while I was doing some debate research. I take every debate opponent very seriously. In your debate with Destiny, you said in a toxic patriarchy, the antidote is feminism. And we need to interject the antidote of feminism. And you were alluding to this because you were saying inside of the West, the antidote of feminism was already interjected. And so there's no reason to go any further with feminism. That's the context.
Okay. I think then, my position on it is if you're in a country that is literally limiting women to work or have a bank account, I think that there's some utility to feminism giving women the right to have a bank account. And I don't think I don't hear how you can make a Christian argument that women shouldn't be allowed to have a bank account. At one point in the United States, they weren't allowed to have a bank account. So I think there's some utility in it.
Do you know why they weren't allowed? Do you think it was just because the men were mean and didn't want them to have their own money, or why do you think that was?
I think that they just weren't allowed to have a bank account because the men in power didn't allow them to have a bank account. And I push back on that. I just allow them to have a bank account. Christianity is about freedom, and that's restricted.
No. First of all, where in the Bible does it say that Christianity is about freedom? And number two, the reason women couldn't have bank accounts is because they were not allowed to be legally held liable for debt, because the lawmakers said that's the man's job. We're not going to hold a woman responsible for any kind of debt or bills or anything like that. That's on the man's shoulders.
So you don't think women should have bank accounts? Do you have a bank account, Rachel? Or do you let everything with your man?
Yeah, everything's with Andrew.
So you don't have a bank account?
No, I only joint accounts with him where I do what he tells me to do with the money. Is that not cards?
Which is to give it all to me, by the way. It's to give it all to me. I don't have nothing, none of the assets are in my name, no, unless, he were to pass away or something
okay, then if you live that way, fair enough. I think
but I'm just asking, are you saying that's fine, but what is this idea that we needed a little bit of feminism? Like so you want women to vote, I would guess.
I really don't like the term feminism. I think that in the United States, there should be equal opportunity and laws should be equal for all races and all sexes.
So you would be for women voting?
I would be for women voting.
And you sell a book on how to end simping? You sell a book on how to end simping, but you're a women's rights advocate? You realize that giving women the vote is how we got legal abortion, the welfare state, all the things that limit freedom. You just said Christianity was about freedom. Rachel, letting women vote is the fastest way to lose your freedom.
I think pushing this idea, this very fringe concept that we should take away the amendment to allow women to vote is going to shy people away from the conservative movement. And you're just going to push more people to the left to vote.
What about my principles? What about my principles, though?
Yeah, what about
my principles?
What's wrong with women?
How are you going to stop simping if you're a women's liberation advocate? So you're basically saying you think Christians throughout history did the wrong thing until 100 years ago.
Where in Christianity can you anchor a biblical argument that women shouldn't be allowed to vote?
They're not even allowed to teach in church. They're not allowed to stand up in church. They must obey their husband. The entire thing is a patriarchal structure. I've already said this.
We live in the United States, which is not a Christian theocracy. Listen,
but you said rights come from God. You said rights come from God, not the government. So if you want to go by the rules God laid down, he said that women are not allowed to teach, they're supposed to cover their heads in the church, and they're supposed to be quiet and ask their husband if they have a question about the teachings of the Bible or the church. So why should we allow them to vote to make abortion legal, to give, gay rights, to have a welfare state, to limit the rights of others? By the way, you said, do you think the government can just take away your rights? Well, that's certainly what happened, 4 years ago, and women were on the front lines demanding that people cover their face and take certain medical interventions. So yeah, if you think Christianity is about freedom, you need to rethink that, because you're just contradicting yourself. That's all. And maybe don't sell a book on how to end the simp epidemic if you're a women's lib advocate. That's all I've got.
So saying that women can vote is being a simp. That's sure.
Feminism from the beginning has all been about, for overthrowing God's natural order. I mean, it's from the beginning. Nothing about feminism was good. Okay, it's always been about overthrowing God's natural order.
I'll just leave you with one more thing. I'll send you a copy of my book, just because I think you probably just don't know, because most people don't know. But the first wave feminists that were responsible for the 19th Amendment, which would be Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, they wrote their own version of the Bible called the Woman's Bible, where they took out all the patriarchal stuff they didn't like. They said that actually no man ever spoke to God, that the Mosaic Law was not delivered to man by God, and that Christianity was basically a fraud and a front for the evil patriarchy. So you should really brush up on some of the history, because I think you've just been spoon-fed
Well,
a lot of lies.
let him respond, and then we got to move to the next caller. Go ahead, RC.
Listen, Rachel, I'm not always right on everything. I'll be willing to read the book that you recommend, and perhaps it changes my mind on some things. But I still stand firm in my belief system. I do not think that it's Christian to say that women shouldn't be allowed to vote in the United States. I don't see how but perhaps I'll read your book and maybe my mind will get changed.
Well, we can only
no
hope.
problem.
Thank you so much. If you guys are wondering in the background about the order, I do give people who are cammed priority, and that's why we're not going by standard order. I always have done that. So if you want to get in faster, cam up. Based Oracle, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead when you're ready. Thank you so much for your call in.
Hey, thank you, Glenn, Andrew, RC, for having this tonight. It was good. And RC, you'll be happy to hear Andrew's audience not a big fan of me. No, but really, this topic has been something on my mind quite a bit. I mean, just throughout time. Is it a net good or bad? And with that said, I think that Andrew made some very compelling arguments. If it already exists, why not utilize it to spread a good message? So my question is, with that said, I mean, and I mean this in all due respect, are you always pissy and emotional when you're responding?
Is that your question? I mean, is that a personal attack? No, I'm not.
No.
Okay.
No, what I meant is that you didn't really seem to follow the line of logic. It was more like, I'm kind of butthurt, ego, rather than getting to the points.
Okay. So the answer to your question is no.
So why did this bring that out of you then?
I don't think it did. You think it did. I disagree with you.
Make it quick. Make it quick, Based, so that he can respond. We can move to the next caller. Go ahead with your last.
I think that was his question.
All right.
Yeah, that was it.
Based Oracle, I really appreciate the call in. It's very kind of you to do so. We'll move on to the next caller. Well, yeah, I think that anybody who participates in dialogue who waits in the background to do so, I think that they're doing a service to the show. I would never take that away. Corinth, you've been waiting patiently in the background. Go ahead when you're ready. You look like a fucking hobo, by the way, but go ahead, man, whenever you're ready.
Sure. So first question is going to be, if we have 1,000 OnlyFans whores and each of them had 10 subscribers, would it be a better world if it was 10,000 men all subbing once or 1,000 men subbing 10 times each?
Neither. They're both bad. So neither. I'm not going to play this game of which one's less bad. Let me ask you this. Is killing 1 million people to save 100 million good?
It's less bad.
No, that's equally as bad. They're both immoral.
No, it's less bad.
No,
it's
I'm not going to.
Also, let's million lives less bad.
Okay. See, that's just a weird subjective morality take that I'm not even going to engage in.
I'm not sure. Well, wait, hang on. I'm not so sure. Like, we'll do the button scenario, right? If you had to push one button where 1 million died or one button where 100 million died, wouldn't you push the 1 million button?
I'm not pushing either button. I'm not.
No, you have to. You have to make the decision.
I'm not making that decision. They're both immoral. This game of which one's less bad, they're both immoral. People's lives, innocent lives, are being taken away. And I'm not going to play this game because that's subjective morality.
It's not subjective morality.
It is. You're trying to play, well, which one is more moral? They're both horrible. And I'm not
they are both horrible. It's a moral
tragedy. What if there was a group of OnlyFans models who was doing nothing but OnlyFans stuff? You're only going to kill the OnlyFans one.
I'm not killing anyone. You know that pro-abortion.
No one's killing anyone in this hypothetical, too.
You understand? Pro-abortion people make the argument: would you save 10 fetuses or one baby in a burning hospital? That's the same question you're asking.
That's not the same question.
It is.
It's asking about when moral value starts. This is a question of, does moral value, is it worse to kill 2 people for 1 person? Is it worse to kill 10 people for 1 person? Is 10 people subscribing to OnlyFans models better or worse than 1 person doing it 10 times?
They're both bad.
I agree. You think both are bad. Do you think that? Okay, so do you think stubbing your toe is good?
What?
Do you think stubbing your toe is good or bad?
I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I think it's an unfortunate thing.
Okay. Do you think hitting someone is good or bad?
Oh man, are you doing it in self-defense?
No, you're just going up to hit someone.
That's bad.
So since it's also bad to kill 100 million people, you think you can't choose between hitting someone to save 100 million people?
Yeah, sure, man, sure.
Perfect.
I'd rather hit someone because their life is not ending versus killing 100 million people to save a billion.
So they're both bad, though. Yet you said you couldn't judge the two bad
I
things.
would strongly argue that causing short-term pain is way less bad than ending somebody's life. I would argue.
The extension of that would be though that then 100 million dying would be less bad than 1 million dying. That would be the same logical extension.
No, any one innocent life dying with any one innocent life dying is bad. Is equally as bad. Period. But Corin, to answer your question, 1 subscribing to 1,000 or 1,000 subscribing to 1, is that your question?
No, it's 1,000 subscribing to 1,000 or 1 subscribing to 1,000.
Well, okay, to be realistic, what Andrew's doing might have some utility to have less guys subscribe, but I think that the Red Pill podcast need to disintegrate and not exist at all. Because I think they're causing more net damage than they are net positive. But sure, to engage with the hypothetical, having less people subscribe to it and having more people turn to Christ is definitely better.
Perfect. So do you agree with ought implies can? Like if you ought to do something, you can do something?
In some instances, not necessarily in this instance because I'm not going to concede that it's good for Andrew all around to go on because I think it creates more net negative than it does net positive. So
you're just rejecting it because you understand that if you accept ought implies can, because Andrew can't just snap his fingers and delete all Red Pill podcasts,
right? Then
he should do what he can do. That's the only reason you're not accepting that.
Yeah, he can call out Brian at the whatever.
By the way, if I could snap my fingers, I would get rid of all of them. Just so you know. But anyway, Corin, thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it. It's very kind of you to call in. Let me move on to the next caller. Appreciate that. Who else do we have back here? Mystery Meat, you've been waiting very patiently.
What a name, bro.
Hell of a name, Mystery Meat. Go ahead when you're ready.
I'm Australian too. You're going to love it. Anyway.
Oh, man. No, I just got to kick you now.
Yeah, just kick me now. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, anyway, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so, I mean, Grid already brought up the point I wanted to make, which I wanted to know if you'd watched the show at all. It seems like your argument is that the point of whatever is to promote OnlyFans, but they end up with literally hours of content with tons of views. Right? And the 7-hour podcasts aren't saying, go to this girl's OnlyFans. It's a 7-hour podcast about dunking on them, basically. So really, the point of the pictures is clickbait, but it's not clickbait to get people to watch the porn. It's clickbait to get people to watch porn creators get dunked on. I mean, if you look at the chat, that's what the majority of the chat is. They love it. That's why they love Andrew on there, because he dunked on the porn creators. And that's why Brian wants Andrew on the show, to dunk on the porn creators, because it's funny. It dismantles the ideology in an entertaining way. Right.
So what's your question?
Well, so I guess my question is, if you haven't watched the show, how do you know the point is to promote the OnlyFans, which you don't, obviously? So would you now then, I guess my real question is, now that you have been educated on the point of the whatever podcast, will you watch it, or are you just going to never look at it because of the porn, the association with porn?
I think the way you're phrasing it could make it sound good and moral and just what's going on. But at the end of the day, the guys clicking in to watch are a lot of these guys in the manosphere watching Red Pill are in pain, and they feel a sense of retribution when they see somebody like me or even Andrew dunking on these feminist ideologies. And they're like, finally, someone's debunking my enemy.
Exactly.
But if they don't turn their life to Christ and they keep watching Red Pill and follow the ideologies of Red Pill, they're going to end up simping those women, because one of the foundational beliefs of Red Pill, which Andrew and I think will agree, which is a prescriptor that's bad, is to the more women you sleep with, the more valuable you become. And the more they watch Red Pill, the more they're going to keep doing that. So just turn to Christ. You don't have to keep watching Red Pill. Sure, it's fun to watch them get debunked, but at the end of the day, it's a net positive for those women, more so than it is a net negative. And they're still benefiting more than they're losing.
Okay, so that's fair, but then I don't really understand your contention with the clickbait porn. Who cares? It's irrelevant to your point.
My contention with the clickbait porn, I think you mean my contention with the clickbait, like suggestive photos on the thumbnails. I think it's very clear that he could use any other thumbnail. The number one podcast in the world, I don't know if it still is, was the Joe Rogan podcast. He never had to put degenerate images or tag like porn stars in the bio to have the number one podcast. He brought on ideological discussions, and that's why it was the number one podcast. He didn't have to stoop to Brian's.
No, he had name recognition before he did that, though. That's different.
He had some name recognition.
No, and he had a lot of name recognition before. Like that's a different. It's a completely different scenario. A nobody that comes out of Santa Barbara and Joe Rogan, who was known as a comedian, who was known as MMA, and an MMA fighter. He was a TV show host. Fear Factor. The guy had more name recognition than Brian.
Yeah.
So
he did. But it took him a while to gain the number one podcast spot. He didn't have it overnight. It took him like what 10, 12 years.
He's had porn stars on many times.
Yeah, and I assume that
not only that, I can name them
point.
for you, and he does put their links down. And in this particular case, he does the exact same thing. He basically just links off to their Instagram or.
And I would disagree with that, but he didn't get famous off of bringing every week.
Yeah, but he still engages. He still engages. Number one podcast, and he still engages even.
But
with
he didn't get to that
stars.
Spot because of the porn stars.
Yeah, but what is the because? He got there because he had contentious views on his show, which he was willing to engage with.
Okay, and I disagree that he brought the porn stars on, and I think he definitely would have still got to the number one spot. Minus you subtract out those porn stars.
Yeah, maybe, but he still brought them on.
And I disagree with him doing that. I don't justify it.
All right.
Yeah.
Mystery Meat, I appreciate the call in.
Cool.
I got to move on to the next caller. RC, I really appreciate you sticking around for the caller section. I have been in your exact position where it's caller after caller that I'm engaging with, so I don't feel bad for you at all, but I do appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Sirius Online, whenever you're ready.
Hey, guys.
This guy's a fan.
Great debate today. Very entertaining. I do have a question. Mostly, I want to start by saying that the girls on the Whatever podcast are easily the fifth most important people there. The first most important is the audience. I don't think that you're displaying principles when you're burning bridges and not expanding your reach. Yeah, there's multiple ways to do that, but it's not a principle to not meet people where they are. My biggest question is related to your collective plan, which I agree with, by the way. It would be ideal for all men to stop.
I agree, too. I agree with that, too. I think that's great.
But how are you going to do that? Where do you start if you don't have the collective already? Because the collective is against us. The most important part of the Whatever podcast or anything like it is to expose incorrect egalitarian feminist worldviews that are held by idiots that can't justify them. So how do we get the collective?
You do what I've done. You can create a platform and stand against
it. You yourself don't even trust your audience to not join these OnlyFans if so much is exposed to them.
There's over 200,000 people that follow me. Of course, I don't know every 200,000 of them. Of course, I don't want to look. I understand, right? As men, we're visual creatures, and if they see that type of content, there's going to be a temptation there. I don't even want to bring them to the temptation. I want it to be as far away as possible.
The temptation is there regardless of your actions, though.
But I don't want to make it easy for them to find the content.
You're not making it easy. Like, how hard is it to write into Google like naked woman?
I don't want to make it easy to have my audience be subjected to it. I can't control what they do in their free time. I'm trying my best to principally show them, hey, I'm not going to engage with this. So I have a lot of temptation to, but I still choose not to.
Last point here.
I just think that if you had seen an entire, even of just one of Andrew's appearances on Whatever, you would understand that what you're actually doing right now is bearing false witness.
Well, Sirius, I do appreciate the call in. I have to move on to the next caller. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Have a wonderful day. And then last caller, been waiting patiently in the background. Revelator, go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, hello. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Andrew. It was a great debate. With RC, I just have a few questions. Right. So with Andrew, because your whole thing is that he cannot even engage with these people because it promotes degeneracy, right? But it's like there are saints, like you know of Saint Vitalis, correct?
I don't. I'm not familiar with Saint Vitalis.
Saint Vitalis, I think Andrew might know who I'm talking about. He's the patron saint of prostitutes, I believe, in that form. And with him, he literally would go to these places, he would hire prostitutes, and he would bring them in, and instead of, he would preach the word to them. Would you have an issue with something like that?
To preach the word to the prostitutes?
Yes, because that's what he was doing.
No, I don't have an issue with that. Trying to turn them to Christ? No, I don't have an issue with
Well,
that.
what is so different from that to what Andrew's doing?
Because in your hypothetical, this prostitute or these prostitutes you're speaking to doesn't have somebody behind them loudly shouting to the audience, here's where they live so you can go and find where she lives.
Again, though, when you say that, it doesn't make much of a difference to me. Because
you don't think that makes a difference?
No, and I'll explain.
Okay.
So the reason I explain is because it's like, again, we live in this society where porn and all this stuff is so easily accessible, as the last caller was saying. Literally, you don't have to look. It's in your face everywhere in that sense. It's not like how it was back then. It's everywhere. And I don't feel like, I feel like you're making a distinction here that has no basis in, like, example, as you were saying that, I'll debate someone even if they promote degeneracy 24/7, but if they have a link, then no. It's just a weird, line you just put there for no reason. And my other question is, do you think that what you're doing might actually bite you in the ass? And I'll explain. Because your thing is that with whatever podcast, I can't go on there because they have a link. Could that not be maybe a tactic of the devil to try and keep really, probably maybe pious Christians from even going on that platform, that you turn your nose and you're like, I won't even engage with it because it's too bad? Aren't you basically damning those people to hell in that sense? Not trying to give them the message in that sense?
I can go on to whatever podcast. I'll concede a bit ground where I said that I wouldn't even engage with someone if they had a link. I would engage one time and call them out for what they're doing, just like I would go on the whatever podcast one time, and I would call Brian out for what he's doing by profiting off of these porn star women that are advertising themselves on his show. I would call that out. I would still fight the good fight. I would still enter the enemy territory.
You're a super smart guy, right? I want to see you on these platforms 100 times. And if you could, hang on, let me finish. If you could do it where you could follow the kind of rules of the platform, what the format is, and still manage to get your messaging in and get invited back to do it to the next round and the next round, to reach out to people who have never seen anything like this before, doesn't that seem like a better tactic?
Maybe to you, but not to me, because I'm going to remain principled. I do not like what the motivating factor for the whatever podcast or even Fresh and Fit podcast is. Their motivating factor is entertainment, money, and attention, which is the same reason the women go on the show. They're not there to help young men.
Hang on. I'm sorry to cut you off. I have to, though, real quick, because the infamous and wonderful Pedro, who was instrumental in the Crucible, just entered the chat. And can we get some crowns in chat for Pedro, one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth? I'm sorry to cut you off. I just don't see him in that much, so I just wanted to give that shout out. Go ahead, RC. I'm sorry.
That I think, I'm trying to remember where I was at, that the motivating factor, the end goal for these Red Pill podcasts is absolutely to generate as much money from their male audience by getting them to clickbait into their videos with the sexually suggestive photos, and then for those girls to gain as many subscribers to their OnlyFans counts as possible. And I think that these guys are acting as a pseudo digital porn, as a digital pimp to advertise these women. And I think that they both know it. The women know it, and the guys pretending to fight for the good fight know what they're doing as well. And I refuse to engage with that. I just refuse.
Last point, caller.
Yes, okay. So, funny enough, it's this is going to sound a little off topic, but I'll make it back. So, I basically play games professionally, a fighting game professionally, and I have a friend, and we're both trying to, and it feels like this weird dichotomy between you and him, in that I am the quickest way to get better is to partner with people who I don't necessarily agree with on everything, but I'll be friendly with them. I'm not gonna like shit on them 24/7. I'll be friendly with them, play sets, gain experience, become better. And your thing is that I'm gonna screw them all. I'm not even worth my time. I'm gonna do the best I can just to get better by myself. It's like, yeah, both things will get you better, but one thing will get you better way quicker. It's way easier than stuff. And I just feel like in this situation, it's just like I feel like it's just a big issue with pride, this principles. Because I don't understand the Bible where you cannot engage because it's like this thing you added. It didn't exist when the Bible was going on. There wasn't a that you could like pull a bullhorn and be like advertising, pornography. Like if you're in a brothel, they'd do that the same way they would. That didn't exist back then.
Right.
So I just feel like with this, it's just an extra addition. And you're saying your principles. I don't know where your principles come from. Honestly.
I'm just saying, if you go back to those biblical times and somebody hosted a debate with the prostitutes at the time, and some Christian came in and said, "Hey, I want to speak truth to them so they can turn their life to Christ," and the guy hosting the event said to the crowd, "Hey, everybody, I'm going to show you the address where all these women live." Don't you think in that context, right, that the disciple would push back on the host and be like, "Hey, don't call out their address. I don't want the men in the audience to know where they live." Do you think he would push back or no?
I don't necessarily think so because one, these prostitutes, probably everyone already knows where they live already to a degree. This isn't like a global society. There probably was a prostitute that everyone knew the red light district.
You gotta wrap it in like 10 seconds, bro. 10 seconds.
It makes no difference to me. But to me, it's very easy and ubiquitous. It's more that same. It makes no difference.
I'm going to call out the host for doing that. That's my position. You don't have to agree. That's my position.
All right. Appreciate the call in. We got through all of the callers. We managed to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't know, RC, are you able to stick around while I pull up some super chats? Or I know we've gone a little bit long.
I'll stay around for like 10 more minutes, but
Okay, well then let me just let you go then. And go ahead and shout your well, I guess you don't want to do that, but if you want to, you still can. It's fine. There's not like I don't have any pushback against you doing that. If you want to shout it out, go ahead.
Andrew, I got a question for him, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know. So, if I'm getting this right, you go onto whatever podcast, and you want to yell at the host.
I don't want to yell at him.
Or you want to correct the host for his ways. Isn't that like going into your neighbor's house and telling them how to live in their own house?
No, because their house is not open for public debate. Their house is their private home.
That's their platform. That's their rules, their thing. Like, I'm just asking, isn't it like the same thing? Hey, I want you to invite me on so I can correct you.
Well, I told him my reason for going on. He doesn't have to invite me on. I told him my reason. I think it would be worse if I pretended to be an ally and then I went on and then turned. I told him specifically why I wanted to go on, and he blocked me. So I don't think it's the same. I understand the analogy. I don't think it's the same thing, though.